Welcome everyone to another Meyer Sound webinar. My name is Merlin van Veen. I'm Senior Technical Support and Education Specialist at Meyer Sound. And without further ado, let's get started with filters in the real world. I will start sharing my screen. I hope that we have a good connection, that everybody can hear me and that I'm audible. And let's get started. So as I said, today is filters in the real world. We have two special instructors, which I will announce in a second. But first and foremost, we're doing this exclusively through our user community, the Meyer Sound user community, which is currently counting over 9,900 members. As you've grown accustomed from us, this webinar will be available in the foreseeable future on our Thinking Sound YouTube channel, where you can find all of our webinars, as well as the one that we're about to do now. So without further ado, I want to announce the first instructor today, the venerable Mauricio Magú Ramirez, Meyer Sound's Senior Technical Seminar Instructor. Magú, are you with us?
Yeah, I am. Thanks, Merlin.
Excellent. And we have another instructor, equally important and dear to me, which is Oscar Barrientos, Meyer Sound's Technical Service Manager for Latin America. Oscar, are you with us?
Yes, thank you, Merlin. I'm here.
This is what you guys have in mind. So without further ado, please explain us what you have in mind for us.
Okay, thank you, Merlin. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for coming and to share, for sharing with us all this time. It's going to be a pleasure to show this information for you. So we're going to manage three main topics, as you can see. The first one is filters as a fundamentals, the slope, the order, topologies, filters and phase, the phase delays instead of group delay. We're going to see the input response, and we're going to analyze a very important traces where we are going to deal with a log amplitude traces versus linear input response of the filters. For the second main topic, we're going to combine some filters. We're going to see what is going to happen if we change the level from one filter, the low pass or the high pass filter. And we're going to see three different cases where the polarity don't really matter, cases where polarity reverse is needed, and cases where the same polarity is going to be required. And for the last main topic, we're going to phase optimize two small speaker, mid-high and a subwoofer speakers. Those one are the MMM4 and the MMM10. And we're going to use the default response, the native response. And then we're going to use a little tricks just to let you figure out what can we do to phase align those speakers by using time or by using filters. And then if we have sometimes we're going to do a question and answer session. So this is for today. If we continue with the presentation, please, next slide, we're going to see the first low frequency filter with the main parameters that we're going to find in the real world. So in this example, you could see a low pass filter that is having two main sections. The left section is called the passband section. Those are the frequencies that we are going to allow to pass to the next device or to the next step in your system. And the right section is going to be the stop band section. So as you could see, the stop band is called high cut because we're cutting off those frequencies from one special frequency all the way to the higher frequencies. From the same kind of reference frequency, we're going to allow to pass those frequencies. That special frequency is called cutoff frequency, where we are going to divide these two sections. And of course, as you can see, we have a slope or order that is telling you that the frequency that we are gonna filter, they're gonna be decreased in level by the slope, considering some dBs per octave, as we're gonna see. So we're gonna see a high pass filter, but before that, I just wanna mention that in the vertical axis, as you can see, we're dealing with decibels, starting from 0 decibel on the top, well, a little bit below on the top, and we're going +3 and +6 dB. And if we go down, we have -3, -6, all the way to -48 dBs. And if you go to the horizontal axis, we're seeing frequencies over there. So we're hitting 31 hertz, 63, 100, 125, 250. And then, as you could see, we're kind of dividing this by octaves. So for the high pass filter, we have kind of the same parameters as we saw for the low pass filters. We could see that we have the stop band, that is also named the lockout section. We have the pass band on the right, that is telling us that those frequencies are going to be allowed to pass for the next device. So that's why we call this high pass, a high pass filter. And we also have, of course, the cutoff frequency that are dividing these two main sections. And you could see the order or the slope of the filter. And talking about the order, the next slide is going to show us what is going to happen if we change the order. As you could see in the right top corner, we're going to see the order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 in colors. So those colors are using is using the same colors with the traces, as you could see. So we're having 8 traces as the colors by order, and you could see that the cutoff frequency that we are using right now is at 1,000 hertz, 1 kilohertz, and we have a cutoff frequency at -3 dB in this example. So if we go 1 octave above the 1K kilohertz, 1K frequency, we could see that we are using 2K because it's the next octave above 1K. And the next octave above that is 4K, of course. And if you see each one of the traces, let's just see the order number 1. As you can see, 1 octave above the cutoff frequency, we're kind of near of 6 dB of attenuation. So the math that we are going to use in this case to figure out what is going to be the slope or the dB attenuation in terms of the order is going to be 6 dB per octave times the order. So in the left section, you could see that we have order first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth. And you could see that we have dBs per octave. And if we select order 1, we're going to see that order 1 is going to have a slope of 6 dBs per octave. Order 2 is going to be 2 times 6, that it's 12 dBs per octave. Order third is going to be 18 dBs per octave. And we are seeing right now this, let me just use a little bit my annotate tool. We're seeing that right now we're having this attenuation on the next octave above 1 kilohertz, and those attenuation are related from what we're seeing over here. So that is going to manage our slope on each case, right? So if we saw the first order, we know that we're going to get 6 dBs of attenuation from the next octave, and we're going to continue that way. If we go to the next octave above 2K, that is going to be 4K, of course, we're going to have another 6 dBs of attenuation. If we go another octave above, we're going to get another 6 dBs of attenuation. Same thing with order number 2, but in this case, we're going to have a slope of 12 dBs per octave. As you could see, the first octave is going to be 12 dBs below our reference, that is 0. And then another octave is going to be another 12 dBs. That is going to be total of 24 dBs. So you could see that we have also these horizontal lines that are related to the traces that we are using with different orders. So you could see that right now, this color is, this kind of yellow color is going to be related to the attenuation that we're going to have 1 octave above. And that is going to be, of course, the slope, because for the next octave, we're going to have another 24 dBs of attenuation. So this is about the high pass filter and the orders. What if we don't change the low pass filter and we use a high pass filter? Okay, if we use a high pass filter, that is the next slide, we're going to see the same behavior. Okay, we're going to have 6 dBs per octave times the order to know the slope of these different traces. So if we again see the order number 1, we're going to see that it is almost minus 6 dB, 1 octave now below the cutoff frequency, and it's below because we're using a high pass filter, of course. Remember that the cutoff frequency that we're using is 1K. So for first order, we're going to have near 6 dBs down from the octave below the cutoff frequency. And if we go another octave below, we're going to have another 6 dB. You could see over here. And if we continue doing that, we're going to get kind of the same behavior. Of course, if we use, for example, order number 8, for order number 8, we're going to have 48 dBs per octave slope. So that means that for our cutoff frequency, the slope below is going to have 48 dBs of attenuation. So the higher the order, the higher the attenuation, as you can see. And remember, the math that we're using right now is to know the slope is 6 dBs per octave times the order. Okay, so we know right now a little bit more about the slope. So let's now move on and see what's going to happen with the frequency. And for this slide, what I want you to see is, well, imagine that we are measuring just a cable by using, you could use a smart or SIM. And if you are measuring a cable, you're going to get a flat amplitude and a flat phase response. And one thing that is very important to mention right now is that in the vertical axis right now, we are not using decibels, but we're using degrees because we're dealing with phase right now. And we have just in the middle 0 degrees of phase, as you can see, we're getting from 0 degrees all the way to the top up to 180 degrees. If we go down, we're gonna go all the way to minus 180 degrees. So we have a total range of 360 degrees. That is kind of normal in many software that we can be using right now. Of course, you can change a little bit the vertical scale if you want in some cases, but at the end, we're just using 360 degrees. And of course, the horizontal axis is, again, we're dealing with frequency over there, and we are using a kind of an octave separation for every single frequency that we're seeing right now. Okay, what I also want you to see is that if we divide this slide, I mean this trace, I would like to see that we have a higher or a upper section, and we have a lower section over here. Okay, those are very important for me because, as you are seeing right now, we are dealing with a low pass filter. Okay, and the trace that I want you to see right now is the one that I'm kind of surrounding at this point. So this is the phase trace for a low pass filter, and as you could see, this trace it doesn't change that much in the lower section. So just relate that with the low pass filter thing, and we also could see that the phase is changing in the high frequency section. So we're gonna know what is gonna be the number for the phase shift at the cutoff frequency. We're gonna know that. But the thing that I'm trying to say right now is that for the low pass filter, the phase is gonna change for the lower section. So just relate the low pass filter with the lower section that we're gonna see moving with the phase.
Section, Oscar.
With the, sorry?
You say lower, but it's higher. You say the low pass filter changes the phase in the lower section. Is the low pass filter changes the phase in the higher section?
Oh, okay, yeah, but what I want to say is that the phase is changing for from here, for this position, to that position. That's why
that is the okay. You are not talking about the higher frequency section. You are talking about the lower part of the screen.
The lower part. Okay, that's that. I want to say that. So this section of phase is going to change for the lower section of the screen. That's what I'm saying. And this is related with the low pass filter. And if we related the same thing, but using a high pass filter, we're gonna see that the high pass filter is gonna
Next slide.
change the phase for the higher section of the screen. As you could see, the phase is changing from here to there. So this is a high pass filter and the phase is moving to the high section of the screen. And of course, we're gonna know what's gonna be the number, the phase shift at the cutoff frequency. And as you can see, we are not changing that much the phase trace for the high frequency section. Okay, so as you might know, this change is gonna be also related to the order. So let's see what is gonna happen with the order. In this slide, we're seeing order 1, 2, 3, and 4. And as you could see, at the cutoff frequency, we have some phase shift right now. And that phase shift is gonna be related to the order with this math. We're gonna change the phase 45 degrees times the order. So for the first order, the change is gonna be minus 45 degrees. The second order is gonna be 90 degrees. The third order is gonna be 135 degrees, negative, and the fourth order is gonna be minus 180 degrees, okay? And as you could see, and again, we're using the same cutoff frequency, that is 1K. For 1K, we're using this reference. You could follow just this color as a reference, and you could see that the first order is gonna have kind of 45 degrees of phase shift. The second order is gonna be 90 degrees, the third order 120 degrees. And you could see, if we go all the way to the right, because we're dealing with a low pass filter, the phase is gonna be near 2 times what we saw at the cutoff frequency. At 2 times 45 degrees is gonna be 90 degrees. 2 times 90 degrees is gonna be 180. And we continue doing that, we're gonna see the same pattern for the higher section of the frequency axis. If we move on, we could see that if we continue with order 5, 6, 7, and 8, the thing is gonna happen in the same way. We're gonna have 45 times the order to see what's gonna be the phase shift at the cutoff frequency. But in this case, and we can see that in the slide that we just saw, when we have not more space to see the phase trace in the lower section, it's gonna appear over the upper section, and then we'll continue. I'm trying to see the order 8 filter. We're gonna continue, and we're gonna see that for order number 8, we're gonna go back to the same point as we had when we don't have any filter. So for order number 8, we are right now having from 0 to this point 180 degrees, and for that point to the cutoff frequency another 180 degrees. So we are having 360 degrees of phase shift right now for order number 8, and that is the math for 45 degrees times the order that is 8 is going to be 360 degrees. So it's working as we saw. If we use a high pass filter instead of a low pass filter, what we're going to see right now with a high pass filter is that we start with order 1 to 4. We're going to see the same, but remember that in this case the phase is going to shift to the higher section of the screen, as I mentioned before. Okay, and we of course know what is going to be the number at the cutoff frequency. It's going to be 45 degrees times the order. So for first order, again 45 degrees. For second order, it's going to be 90 degrees. Third order, 135 degrees. Fourth order is going to be 180 degrees, as we just saw for the low pass filter version. And if we move on, and we see the order 5, 6, 7, and 8, we're gonna see the same thing. Just remember that the phase is changing from here all the way to the top, and all of these traces are gonna continue in the lower section just to see what is gonna happen at the end at the cutoff frequency. And in there we can see the phase shift at the end, but by using the same math as we did before. Okay, so this is about the phase shift that we're going to have in terms of the order that we are we're using in every single case, okay? So if we move on right now, we're gonna see a special slide for you, okay? And then I'm saying special because if you see the vertical axis right now is not 360 degrees total, but it is from 0 to 720 degrees and from 0 to minus 720 degrees. So it's a special view of the phase traces. And you could see a kind of resume for what we just saw in this case. You see just the upper section of the screen, you're gonna see the behavior of the high pass filter phase shift for order 1 to 8. If you see the lower section of the screen, you're gonna see the low pass filter action for the phase shift in order 1 to 8 as well. And again, you're gonna see that the colors are related to the order, as you could see. And you could also see what we just mentioned. We're gonna know what is gonna be the phase shift at the cutoff frequency, and we're gonna know what is gonna be the phase in the lower or higher section, depending if you are using a high pass filter or a low pass filter. What I mean is, if I'm, for example, I'm using the order number 4 for the high pass filter and order number 4 for the low pass filter, we can see that the phase shift that we're gonna have over there is gonna be 180 and sorry, 180. I was good. I was okay. 180 degrees for the fourth order over here and 180 degrees for the fourth order over here. And we're going to be ending 2 times that number, that is 360, by going all the way to the lower section or higher section, depending on the higher, low or high pass filter that you are using right now. So this is all about the phase and the filters. I hope you have like a review or a better understanding of how is the phase shifting when you are dealing with different filters. And now we're going to move up to another section that Magú is going to manage this next section.
Marlene, before you change the slide, it's what is important for everybody is understand that from when you use any analyzer that display phase, every time you use a low pass filter, the range of frequencies that will show more phase deviation with a low pass filters is the highest frequency section, and the phase deviation will be from the center of the screen moving down. And every time you use a high pass filter, with a high pass filter, the phase deviation will be in the lower portion of frequencies and it will move up in the screen. So these are like the keys that you have to look for. Okay, and of course, all the values, as Oscar mentioned, that is every 45 degrees, 45 degree per order, the same as 6 dB per order. This is always the same. So let's see right now what is called topologies, and that is the next slide. And the typical for topologies that we can see in historical context start with Butterworth, that is from 1930, then Lincoln Riley from 1970. Sorry, Bessel, under Butterworth is Bessel from 1949, then Lincoln Riley from 1978, and Bessel normalized from 1998. And what is important here is to understand that the differences between every one of these topologies basically lays in what happens at the cutoff frequency. This guy shows 3 decibels down at what is the cutoff frequency. That is the Butterworth. But it's interesting that Bessel always shows 3 decibels of attenuation at the cutoff frequency. But what is the difference between them? Well, the main difference between them is that the transition area that is here, that is the transition area, in Butterworth, transition area changes per order. The higher the order, the bandwidth of the transition area is not as much, but the lower the order, the transition area starts earlier in frequency. But with the Bessel, the transition area shows that the attenuation, the roll-off before the cutoff frequency is identical always. So in Bessel, you have same transition area, but in Butterworth you have different transition area. And if we go to Lincoln-Riley is very similar to the Butterworth. The only difference is that Lincoln-Riley cut off at -6. So that is the major difference, cut at -6. And in the schematic design, the Lincoln-Riley is created using two Butterworths in series. So if you have a Butterworth order 1, and then in series with another Butterworth order 1, we have Lincoln-Riley. And for this reason, typically you will find Lincoln-Riley in pair orders, order 2, 4, 6, and 8. You will not find 1, 3rd, 5th, or 7th. And one variation of bezel that was proposed by Ray Miller is to make that the original bezel filter, instead of be always -3, changes the attenuation at the cutoff in a step of 1.5 decibels starting in -3. So the order number 1 attenuate -3, the order number 2 attenuate 4.5, the order number 3 attenuate 6, the order number 4 attenuate 7.5, and goes on. Then please go with the next slide, Marilyn. And you can see here a zoom in of the previous explanations, where you can see that you can see a vertical rectangle, and in the vertical rectangle, you can see that all the Butterworths got at -3. And in the bottom, you can see in the vertical rectangle that the phase shift in the rectangle is 45 degrees, 90, 135, 180, and go all the way, if we come back from the bottom, until in order number 8, we have 360. With Lincoln-Riley, you can see that instead of showing 8 variation filters, we have only 4 variation filters, because it's order 2, 4, 6, and 8. And in Lincoln-Riley, you can see -6 in all the options. And for this reason, you can see in phase only 90 degrees, 180, 270, and 360. With a standard bezel, you can see that all the filters cut off at -3, but in the upper frequency section, all the filters shows identical response. And in the Butterworth, in the higher frequency section, you can see that the response changes. And in this case, and this is important to understand, in the bezel, the original bezel, the phase shift is not goes in steps of 45. It's only 45 with the first order. And after the first order, all the other filters changes less than 45, and order number 8 is just 180 degrees. This is what happens with the standard bezel. But with the normalized bezel, where you can see here in the right, order number 1 is -3 decibels, and the order number 8 is 13.5 decibels of attenuation. But you can see that in the transition area, the higher frequency portion, you can see that they are not identical as in the original bezel, that is the previous graphic. And when we normalize the bezel, then we can see the phase changes in a step of 45, 45, 90, 135, 180, until with order number 8 is 360 degrees. With the next slide, we come back to Oscar. Oscar, if you have not read this, we are 10 minutes behind.
Yeah, I read that. Thank you. Okay, guys, let's move on. So we're seeing right now low pass filter traces, low pass filter traces for order 1 to 8 in over this section. Okay, and below that we're seeing what's going to happen with the phase. As we saw, the phase is related to the order, and we have a new kind of traces. These traces are related to the phase delay. So in this case, we are not showing degrees on the vertical axis, but we're showing time in milliseconds, okay? And what we are seeing is what is gonna be the time for every single frequency if we consider that we're delaying because of the phase shift all of this frequency, okay? And if we do the math, we're gonna see this kind of traces. We actually saw the order number 8. We're gonna see that by the time that we are getting the cutoff frequency, that is right here, we're gonna reach 1 millisecond of delay. Why is that? Because remember, for order number 8, we're gonna phase shift at the cutoff frequency something around 360 degrees, and 360 degrees is 1 period of time of 1 kilohertz, that is our cutoff frequency. And the period of time of 1 kilohertz is going to be 1 millisecond. So that's why we're getting this. And if you do the math for all of the traces, considering what is happening with the phase shift, you're going to see this kind of traces. Those are called the phase delay traces. And in this case, we're seeing the phase delay for order 1 all the way to order number 8. This is the phase delay for low pass filter. What is going to happen if we change the low pass filter and we use a high pass filter right now? If we do that, we're going to see that the behavior is going to be the same. If we change our slide, we're going to see the high pass filter version of this, and we're seeing that the phase delay is the same because we're moving the same amount of phase shift every single trace by using different orders. So it doesn't matter if we are using a low pass filter or high pass filter, the phase delay is going to be the same. And as you can see, the phase shift, the time that we're changing is going to be a very small amount for the higher section of the frequency, and we're going to see, depending on the order, a big amount of changing over this area. So the higher the order, the higher the time is going to change for every single frequency. Okay. So if we move on right now, we're going to see an input response. And in this slide, we're seeing an input response like if we were measuring a cable, you know, the cable is going to have a flat amplitude response and a flat phase response. And we are seeing an input response getting from that measurement. So as you could see right now, we're having an amplitude axis over the vertical section, and we're seeing milliseconds in the horizontal sections, and we have a special reference point over here that is 0 milliseconds. And as you could see, we are having a signal just at that point in the center of the screen where we have 0 milliseconds. So an input response that is like this is telling you that the signal is gonna exist just only in one moment and it's gonna disappear in the next time. So we're seeing this as a measurement with a cable, okay? But what is gonna happen if we use not a cable, but we are using different filters? If we use a high pass filter, the input response is gonna change as we're gonna see for the next slide. So in this slide, we're seeing that we're starting in 0 millisecond, that is around here, okay? And we're going all the way to the 1.5 milliseconds. And as you could see, almost every order, or every high pass filter order is gonna start near 1.0 in the amplitude axis, and we're gonna go a little bit down for some orders, and then we're gonna go back, and we're gonna go around 0 in the magnitude scale. It depends on the order, of course. If we zoom in this slide, we're gonna see the next one. Let me just clear my drawings, where you could see with a little bit more detail, because we are not going all the way to the amplitude 1, but we're just staying in 0.2. We're gonna see how is every single order moving. If you, for example, see order number 8, you're gonna see that order number 8 is gonna go a little bit down from 0 or near minus 0.15, and we're going back over this area, and then we're gonna be back a little bit down from 0, and then we're gonna be up and then down from 0. That means that we are having some delay for the lower section of the frequencies in this case. And if you see the order number 1, you're seeing that the order number 1 is going a little bit down from 0, and then it goes back and it goes near 0 for the time that we're showing at this point. So this is the input response of the filter, the high pass filters, or the 1 to 8. What happens if we see the input response of the low pass filters? Oh, before that, sorry, I forgot that this slide. What we're seeing right now is that the input response is showing us also what we are going to see in the phase delay. We're seeing that the phase delay is going to be delaying the lower section of the frequency, as you could see, and the higher the order, the higher the delay that we're going to get. So we're seeing kind of the same thing with the input response over here. You need to be very have a lot of experience to know how is this related with the frequency. Don't try this at the beginning. You need to practice more and more to see that behavior. If we continue with the slides, we're going to see now the input response for a low pass filter. And again, if you could see, we're having an amplitude of 1 over here, and we have the order input response of 1 to 8 over this area. And as you can see, the amplitude of the inputs for order 1 to 8 is very small. So sometimes you actually might think that you are not measuring in a good way because you are not seeing the input response, but that's not true. If we do a zoom in the vertical scale, we're going to see with more detail in the next slide. We're going to see a zoom in the vertical scale. Right now, we are just going to a little bit up to 0.03 in the amplitude scale, and we are going to minus 0.005 in the lower section. So as you could see, we have order 1 to 8, and if you follow this kind of maximum amplitude for every single order, you're gonna see that this maximum amplitude is gonna be lower while we are moving from order 1 to 8. And you also could see that this same peak of amplitude is gonna be to the right as you increase the order. So what we are just saying is that you're gonna have more delay while you are increasing the order. So this is the low pass filter section. If we move on, we're gonna see that the phase delay that we just saw is telling you the same. The higher the order, the higher the delay you're gonna have for every single order. Okay. Okay. Now let's move on because we are kind of worried about the time. So let's move on and see the next slide that is gonna show us we summarize what we saw. We have the high pass filter order 1 to 8, the phase behavior for the same orders, the input response of those, and the phase delay for the high pass filter. And if we change the next slide, we're gonna see the same thing, but for the low pass filter orders 1 to 8. Okay, let's move on and let's see the next slide that is gonna show some things, and Magú is gonna.
Merlin, before we enter here, can you go back 2 previous slides? Okay, pay attention that here, let me do what is draw, that here, this is the phase delay when using a high pass filter. And it's important to observe that the portion of frequency that has more delay is always the low frequency portion. And the portion of frequencies with less delay is the high frequency portion. However, and it's very common to have this misconception that if the high pass delay the low frequencies, we may think that the low pass delay the high frequencies. But change to the low pass graphic, Merlin, and we will see that it's exactly identical. So with the low pass filter, we exhibit the same phase delay as with the high pass filter if the cutoff frequency is the same, the frequency of the filter is the same, and if the order is the same. One of the other important things is that also it's common that we have a confusion because internally for an analyzer, the input response is a linear domain calculation, and also inside the analyzers, they do the calculations in linear, but they represent the information in logarithmic. So to explain a very important topic that people tend to ask is why when I am measuring subwoofers, I don't see the input response. Okay, so now we can see here in the top graphic, that's the input response. In the middle graphic, this is a frequency response, and we have 30 decibel range from the center to the top and 30 decibel range from the center to the bottom. And important thing, the trace in the center is logarithmic labels, but the graphic in the bottom is the same amplitude, 30 decibel to the top, 30 decibel to the bottom, but the labels in the bottom one, it's linear. And what this means, well, we can see here in the graphic in the center that we have numbers from 1 to 10. So this is the octave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So from 20 to 20,000 hertz, we have 10 octaves. But in linear domain, we are reaching to the Nyquist frequency, or the highest frequency in digital, because in this case, the analyzer is 48 kilohertz amplitude rate. The highest frequency is 24K. So we can see that the top area is 24K. Half of the graphic is 12K. And to the left, another half is 6K, then another half 3K, another half 1.5K. And we are having the divisions, half and half and half and half. So when this is no filtering in any single frequency, the amplitude of the input response is 100%, that this means 1. If we see the next slide, in the next slide, we can see that we have a low pass filter at 12,000 hertz. In the center graphic, well, in the input response, the amplitude of the impulse right now is 0.5 linear, or 50%, as you can see here, reading the labels. And from logarithmic point of view, we have only filtered 1 octave. But in linear domain, we are filtering half of the information. And because we are filtering in linear half of the information, the input response shows half of the amplitude. Come to the next slide. And when we go to the next slide, we have 2 octaves filter. So we have 8 octaves on filter. However, the amplitude of the impulse is 25% from the original 100%. And this is because the unfiltered information is 25%, and what we have filtered is 75%. So the linear information on filter is 25, the linear information filter is 75%. So if we go to the next slide, we will see that now the amplitude of the impulse is 12.5%, in linear is 0.125, and we are filtering only 3 octaves of information, and we have 7 octaves on filter. But right now we are filtering 87.5 of the information. So the unfiltered information is 12.5%. That is the one that produces this very little amplitude impulse. And in the next slide, we filter another octave, and you can see right now that the amplitude of the impulse right now is 6.25%. And I think that everything right now is obvious. I don't need to explain all these details, because we can see that in linear, we have basically 6.25 of information on filter. Next slide, and we can see that in linear, before the next slide, can you come back one more? Since the amplitude of the impulse is so little, what we will do is rescale the vertical labels in the input response that right now reach 100%. So in the next slide, we will see that the amplitude right now, it's only from plus 8% to minus 8%. So this is like we are doing a zoom in. And with this zoom in, we can see the big spike right now. We can see, oh, the input response is there. Yes, but it's still 6.25% of amplitude. If we continue with the next slide, we can see that we are filtering 5 octaves, and we have 5 octaves on filter. The normal person, and I can say it was me many years ago, I was thinking, why, if I filter half of the bandwidth, why the impulse is so little and is not 50%? Well, because the input response is linear, and inside the analyzer, the calculation are linear. So what we can see here is 3% of amplitude, because we have 3% of information on filter. And again, if we do zoom in this zoom in, we still have the plus minus 80% in the vertical scale. So you can see that the amplitude is not as large as before, but still, this is the 3%. In the next slide, we can see that if we filter 6 octaves, right now it's very difficult to see the impulse. It reads that it's 1.5%, and because the unfiltered information is 1.5%. In this case, if we go to the next slide, you can see that right now the amplitude of the impulse looks less than before because we retain the plus minus 8% in the scale. And also what we are doing here is the horizontal scale right now is minus 32 milliseconds to plus 32 milliseconds. So we are changing the time range in order to make the impulse to be more slim. Otherwise, if we retain the original time range that was only from minus 7.5 to 7.5, the impulse will be displayed as more fat. Please, next slide, Merlin. And what we will see in the next slide is that we are filtering another octave, and right now we have only 4 octaves on filter, and we are basically in the frequency portion of around 187 hertz. So 188 hertz, we can read here in the label in the top right. So this is still not subwoofer range. Subwoofer range is still 1 octave more, but the unfiltered portion is not even 1%, it's 0.78%. So again, doing zooming in the input response, we can see that doing a time range of plus minus 32 milliseconds make us realize the impulse, and we have a vertical range of plus minus 1.1% of amplitude. So the information is still there. But if we are not doing vertical zooming and horizontal zooming, it will be basically impossible to learn where is the peak of the amplitude of the input response. And finally, the last slide of this section shows how we can calculate the amplitude of the input response. Basically, what you have to do is to divide the low pass frequency, that is the values here in the right, the low pass frequency divided by the highest frequency, in this case in digital, the Nyquist frequency. And this will give you a linear value that if you multiply the linear value by 100%, you will have percentage. What happens when we take a high pass filter and a low pass filter? Okay, let me explain you all these series of graphics that we will see. There are many, many, many. And the one in the top left is individual high pass and individual low pass. Both has identical polarity and is positive. The graphic in the bottom is the high pass and the low pass, same ones, but being zoomed. And you can see that in this case, this is the response of the summation here. The graphics in the right, the top ones individual, but in the ones in the right, the low frequency band is being polarity reversal. And in the bottom one is the polarity reversal, and then with the summation. So let's start and pay attention to details. The first one is order number 1, and you will see why the label in the bottom says crossover where polarity does not matter. Okay, first order low pass will shift the phase 45 degrees from the center, but 45 degrees down. And the high pass will shift 45 degrees from the center, but will shift up. So this means that the total deviation between these two filters is 90 degrees. And because we have a 90-degree offset that you can read here in the lower graphic, 90 degree will not allow to obtain the maximum summation. That should be 6, but 90 degree makes 3 decibel summation. Because the crossover point is at minus 3 decibels, if we add 3 decibels, the final response stays flat. Okay. The other important thing here is that the high pass filter, the upper portion is at 0. This is positive polarity. And the low pass filter, the lower frequency is at 0. So this is indication that the low pass filter is in positive polarity and the high pass filter is in the positive polarity. But now we change polarity in the low band. And again, the high band shows that it's at 0, is positive polarity. But now the low band shows that the phase is at 180 degrees. this is telling us that this is negative polarity. So we have a situation where we have positive polarity and negative polarity. And this, the positive polarity that from 0 degree, that 0 degree is here, it still has, as before, 45 degree shift. But in the other one that where originally the phase used to be 45 degree here, after 180 degree polarity change, relocate here. And what is very interesting is that the total deviation from here to here is still 90 degree, as you can read here in the bottom. So 90 degree will make that we have summation of 3 decibels. And what is very unique is that this is one of the several situations where having same polarity or opposite polarity, nothing happens, no change. It's no matter, and Merlin has a very nice expression for this situation.
I love to call it idiot proof. It doesn't matter how you connect the banana connectors.
And this idiot proof if you only use one cabinet.
That's true.
Because if you use 2 cabinets, well, the 2 cabinets used to have the identical idiot error to avoid cancels. Okay. Merlin, please, next slide. And in the next slide, what we will see is that we have third order. Third order is the next situation where polarity doesn't matter. From here to here, this is 135 degree shift, and from here to here is 135 degree shift. The total deviation is 270 degree. 270 degree that you can see here in the bottom, and 270 degree has the same consequences as 90 degree in terms of phase summation. So we still have 3 decibel summation, and the response comes back to be flat. In this case, we are using Butterworth filter that intersects at -3. Important thing, the high frequencies in the high portion is at 0, so this is positive polarity. The low frequencies in lowest portion is at 0, that means that it's positive polarity. However, the final phase response of these 2 situations, is the final phase response of this combination. It is the one that I am drawing, is this. So you can see that is a vertical jump in the phase, and this vertical jump in the phase is telling us that is group delay or phase delay. The lower frequency portion is delay compared to the higher frequency portion. In the graphics in the right, we have polarity reversal in the low band. Clear all drawings. Okay, my drawings. Okay. And now, if we see with polarity reversal in the low frequency, you can see that is polarity reversal because the lower frequency portion is in 180. The higher frequency portion here, it is at 0, so this is positive polarity. When we shift the polarity that used to be in the low band, used to be around here, with the polarity change, it flipped here. So the deviation, instead of 270 degree, now is 90 degree. And 90 degree, as we saw in the previous example, produce 3 decibel summation. So this 90 degree of difference that we see here in the bottom, it will make the summation. And again, by watching the phase, this is positive in the high frequencies, and this is negative in the low frequencies. We have a group delay, and the group delay is being represented because the final phase graphic is not completely in the center. We have these lower frequencies are delayed compared to the higher frequencies. And we go to order number 5. The order number 5, it's similar situation. Polarity does not matter. And polarity does not matter in order number 5. Now what we can see is that the high pass filter is shift beyond the 180, and the low pass filter is shift beyond the 180. But however, the phase deviation still is 270 degrees. And as we say before, the higher frequencies in the higher portion is at 0, is positive. The lower frequencies in the lower portion, it's at 0, is positive. So we have flat response we are using Butterworth, and we have no problem when they have positive and positive. But when we change the polarity reverse, the polarity in one of the bands, in this case, low band, you can see high band is at 0 degree here is positive, low band is at 180 degree here is negative, and the phase deviation here, you can read by these arrows in the bottom, is 90 degree offset. So the 90 degree offset, we know that only produce 3 decibel summation, it goes flat, and we can see that being positive, negative, again, this is a situation where we don't see problems. And the last slide from where the filters will not be affected by polarity decisions, order number 7. And it's the same situation, positive in the high frequencies, positive in the low frequencies. We have 90 degree phase deviation, the response goes flat, but we can see very, very dramatic phase delay or, sorry, my graphic is wrong. Clear my drawing. Okay, the one that has to be drawn is the red one. From here, we go to here and finish here. Okay, so this is the final phase graphic, and the phase graphic shows a lot of phase delay, a lot of group delay, but basically means that the lower frequencies are exhibit more time delay versus the high frequencies. Doing a polarity reversal, in this case, you can see high frequencies in the high portion remains at 0, and low frequencies in the low portion is at 180, so this is negative, and we can see 180 degree phase offset. So the final phase graphic, it is from here, then continue here. And we can see that we have positive in the high frequencies, negative in the low frequencies, and we don't have any cancel, anything. We still have 3 decibel summation. So we can summarize right now that if any one of you decide to use order 1, 3rd, 5th, or 7th, and you use only one cabinet, polarity does not matter. Okay, let's see when you will need to intentionally use a polarity reversal.
So Magoo, I think, to augment what you said, that in general, you can say that odd order combinations are idiot proof, unlike even combinations, as we're about to see.
Well, yeah, odd order is idiot proof using only one cabinet.
Right.
Yes. So Oscar, explain about situation where it's mandatory to reverse polarity in one band.
Okay, thanks, Magoo. So as you can see right now, we are using a low pass filter and a high pass filter. You can see over here, the low pass filter, the high pass filter. And because we are using a second order filter, the phase shift is gonna be 90 degrees from 0 for the high pass filter and 90 degrees from 0 for the low pass filter, starting from the center. So because we are 90 degrees difference from 0 to the high pass filter and 90 degrees from 0 to the low pass filter, we're having a total of 180 degrees of phase shift between the low and high pass filter. So if we zoom these two filters together, we're gonna get cancellation, of course, because of the 180 degrees of phase shift. So we are gonna have this cancellation, and if we want to improve this, of course, we need to polarity reverse one of the filters, even the low or the high pass filter. If you change the polarity, you're gonna see a summation. And as you could see, the high pass filter is having this phase, and as you can see over here, the phase is the same for this trace, and for the low pass filter, we have this phase trace, as you can see over here, and for the low pass filter, in this image is kind of the same. Actually, it is overlapping the high pass filter phase. So what that means is that we are using a polarity reverse in the low frequency section for the low pass filter. And when we do that, we're gonna have the same phase shift for both filters, the low pass and the high pass filter. And of course, by doing that, we're gonna get a very good sum over here. So because we are having the crossover section over here, we know that we are using a Butterworth filters, so we are having -3 dBs over here where the crossover frequency is. So if we are adding plus 6 dBs because we're in phase, we're gonna be ending having a sum of 6 dBs. So going from minus 3 dBs all the way to plus 3 dBs. So this is a case where we need a polarity reverse in one of the filters in order to get a good summation over there, a good sum over there. If we move on and we change the order, and we are gonna see order number 6 right now, we're gonna see a similar situation. You could see the phase tracers at the cutoff frequency is gonna be 180 degree of phase shift between them. So if we zoom these two filters, we're gonna get cancellation again. That's why you need to reverse the polarity in one of the filters. And as you could see, the low pass filter is having this phase trace right now. Okay, same thing over here. We're seeing the phase trace for the low pass, for the, sorry, this is the high pass filter, and the phase trace for the low pass filter is over here. Same thing over here. And as you could see, what we are doing right now over this image is to reverse the polarity for the low pass filter. So that is gonna give us the same phase trace for the low pass and the high pass filter. And of course, that means that we're gonna get a very good zoom when we add these two filters, and we are seeing right here. So for order number 2 and order number 6, you need to do a polarity reverse. You can do it in the low pass filter or in the high pass filter. And as Magú said, if you are having two speakers, just do the polarity reverse in the same section as you are doing the other speaker in order to get a very good combination with these two speakers. And I think that this is the only two cases that we are having where we need a polarity reverse in one of the filters.
We've seen the odd order combinations, which are idiot proof, and we've just learned that 2nd and 6th require polarity reversal. So which ones are left over? Well, that's going to be the 4th and the 8th. And it should come not as a surprise that the 4th and the 8th require no polarity reversal, because if we look at the phase in the pass band, then we see that over here we have 0 degrees in the pass band for the low pass filter, and we have 0 degrees in the pass band for the high pass filter. So they're both in polarity, and you can see that no matter where you look, that the phase traces are beautifully overlapping each other. No matter where you look, they're living on top of each other perfectly. So everywhere you look, you see both pass bands in phase for all frequencies. And since we're dealing with the Butterworth typology, when you're in phase and on time, it should not come as a surprise. When you add 2 minus 3 dB points in phase and in time, you're going to gain 6 dB of summation. If you were to apply a polarity reversal in this case, which is 4th and 8th, you're going to do the very thing which you want to avoid, which is achieve a big amount of cancellation at the crossover frequency, which is typically highly undesirable unless you happen to be not a member of the SPL Preservation Society. And then here we see the 8th order version, and again, no surprises here. We're, for the pass band phase, for the low pass, we're in phase. That's to say we have no polarity reversal, 0 degrees, and the same is true for the high pass, where in the pass band we have a 0 degree, which is telling us that it's in polarity, so no reason to flip any polarities for these even order, that is 4th and 8th, for these combinations. And with that, we're going to move to Oscar, who's going to talk about level change and how it affects the crossover.
Yes, Oscar, something that we bypass in the explanation, it's how the level differences between bands will change the crossover value. But this can be explained right now when you have the subwoofer and the MM4, because in live, you can change the relative levels and people will see how the crossover point changes.
Okay, we have a high pass filter traces for magnitude and phase response over here. So if we just store that, I did it, it is stored right now. And if we change the high pass filter and we use a low pass filter as well, we're gonna have a crossover frequency over here, right? So I'm gonna store that, and let's just imagine that we are gonna increase the level for the low pass filter. So what I'm gonna do is just to mark this section by saying that we have a crossover frequency over here, and if we go back and we increase, let's say, plus 6 dB for the low pass filter, and we do that, we're gonna see that the crossover frequency is changing over here, okay? So we move right now the crossover section by doing that. As you could see, we're having the crossover frequency over here, and now we have the crossover frequency over here by increasing by 6 dBs the low pass filter. And if we reduce 6 dBs the low pass filter, we're gonna see right now that we're gonna have a crossover frequency over here. So that is a consequence that we are seeing right now. And if we do the same, not using the low pass filter, but the high pass filter, I'm gonna just remove this, and I'm gonna change the level now for the high pass filter. I'm gonna add 6 dBs for the high pass filter right now, and as you could see, the crossover section is moving over this zone right now. And I'm gonna mark this as well, just in order to see that we are having a different crossover frequencies. And now we can just go back and do minus 6 dB in the high pass filter, and we're gonna see another crossover point over here. So as you could see, if you move the level of the filters by adding or decreasing that level, you're gonna move the crossover frequencies, and you could change that by changing the level. The good news is you know that you're gonna change the crossover frequency, and you should notice that the phases doesn't change. It doesn't change because as if you change the level, the phases won't change, right? Okay.
Of course, so Oscar, the phase will not be an issue if the phase alignment has been done previously.
Exactly.
The key here with what you explain is this: the crossover will shift in the direction of the band with less level. If the band with less level is the high frequencies, the crossover will shift higher in frequency. If the band with less level is the lower band, then the crossover will shift in the direction of low frequencies. Okay, so now, please, Oscar, start to do live measurements with the speakers that you have in your house.
We are having these two speakers, very small speaker that is the MM4, and we're having a small subwoofer as well that is the MM10. And you can see the microphone over here, over this area, and the microphone is seen to do these two speakers like this, something like this. So as you could see, the two speakers are grill aligned. You know, the grill is aligned vertically in this image. So that is what we are gonna measure. We're gonna have 3 different setups. The first one is gonna be the one that is native. That means that if you just grill align the speakers, you're gonna get this response. So right now we're measuring the MM4, so we're gonna store this. Right now we are dealing with the MM10. So as you could see, right now, I wanna move a little bit the phase traces because it's very hard to see the phase around the crossover frequency that is right now over here. So I'm moving particularly the phase response right now in order to see in a better shape the both traces over this area where we're gonna have the crossover frequency. So as you could see, we are very near each other in the phase traces. So that means that we're gonna have a very good zoom over the overlap area. So let me just go back and
Oscar, before you go back, just let me point out that right now the labels in the phase graphic in the analyzer, the 0 right now is where you can see this rectangle, and this is very helpful because as before, the phase traces was on top and bottom. It's difficult for when we are learning how to use analyzer, difficult to realize if we are good or not. The second thing that I want to point out is that in the company, in Meyer Sound, combining the MM4 with the MM10, when they are coplanar, that means the front of the grills are in the same plane, the speakers are already phase aligned, so we don't need to do anything. And basically, I know that it may be frustrating for a lot of some guys that wants to play delay or play filter or whatever to adjust the phase. In the case of MM4 and MM10, if they are aligned in the grill, my apologies, but they are already phase aligned.
Okay, now let's add this to speaker. As you could see, we're getting a very good zoom over the crossover area, as you could see over here. So let's store this as native mode. Okay, so now we have a native mode, but as Magú said, it could be nice if we play a little bit with more tools. So let me just do some changes over here. I don't want you to see those changes, of course, because...
And I explained that while Oscar is modifying the parameters in the processor Galaxy, the changes may be that he intentionally will add delay to the MM4 or he will add delay to the MM10, like if they are not aligned grill to grill, but like if the MM4 can be in one position, maybe frown, and the subwoofer can be in other position, maybe the ground, and the trajectories that they will have to the position of the microphone where you want to measure are not identical. So let's simulate this. And we have to do this because the house of Oscar is not large enough to physically move the speakers.
That's true. I need a bigger house to do that. So
like the house of Merlin.
Hey.
So again, this is about the MMM4. So MMM4 trace number 2. Okay, and I'm gonna change and measure the MM10.
So this rectangle is like the crossover area that we are looking for. We can see that the area of crossover shows that the phase graphics, they have two different situations. One of the situations is that they are not together. One of these has more down tilt. The one that shows more down tilt from left to right is telling that it's been later in time. And the one that has less down tilt and even moves up in the screen means that goes earlier. So here is no brainer. It's clear that we need to apply electronic delay. And let's have a mark, let's say here, and a mark, what is this frequency, 125, and here. And every division is 30 degrees, so we have 30, 60, 90, 120 degree. 120 degree is 1/3. Let me take my calculator. And 130 degrees, 1/3 of the time period. And this 125, it is 8 milliseconds. 8 milliseconds. 8 milliseconds divided by 3. Okay, Oscar, it seems that you have to use 2.7 milliseconds in the MM10 in the subwoofer in order that the phase can match better.
2 points, sorry?
2.7.
2.7, okay. That's good.
Okay, I can see that the phase matches pretty good outside the range around 250. So what I prefer is you decrease a little bit the time from 2.7, maybe 2.2 or 2.3. Okay. Or 2.25, between 2.2 and 2.3.
Now it's 2.3.
Okay, so you can see that right now in the area of crossover, they are closer. In the lower portion, the thick trace is below the narrow trace, but in the higher portion, the thick trace is above the narrow trace. So this means that that's the best situation that we can do. And can you do the summation?
Yes.
By the way, Oscar, we have not shown to the people the capacities of filters, high pass, low pass in the Meyer Sound processor. And because this presentation is called filters in the real world, and with the knowledge that we have that filters modify the phase in steps of 45 degrees, and that the low pass shift the filter in the bottom area and the high pass shift the phase in the upper area, let's remove everything again and let's or keep change time delay again, everything. And we have to decide the phase alignment, not with delay, but deciding to introduce or a low pass filter or a high pass filter with the proper order. So
okay,
this is what we will apply the knowledge of today as in the real world. But before this, show us in the processor what are the available option of filters.
now I'm using virtual Galaxy right here, and I'm going in that tab right now, and I'm going to channel of output processing, and in this tab, you know, we're an output processing tab, channel setting tab, and here we have a high pass filter section and a low pass filter section. If I just click on this little arrow, we're gonna pop up this window, and we're gonna see that we have Butterworth order 1, 2, 3, 4, and 8, and Language Rally order 2 and order 4.
You know, just in the interest of managing expectations, early we learned from Magoo that, you know, a Language-Riley is basically achieved by cascading 2 Butterworth filters. And that means that by definition, there are no odd order Language-Rileys, because if you put a first order Butterworth in series with a first order Butterworth, you're going to get a second order Language-Riley. And the same is true if you put a second order Butterworth in series with a second order Butterworth, you're automatically going to get a fourth order Language-Riley. So if you see a third or fifth or seventh order Language-Riley in the wild, then you better start questioning what's going on.
In Maryland, I have a friend. His name is Ruben Mata, and he's in the process of doing a processor, and he came with the idea to cascade an order 2 versus with an order 1, so he will have an order third Language-Riley. But when he told me this, I said, well, that will not be a Language-Riley filter. This will be a Ruben Mata filter.
Okay, those are the options for the low pass filter. As you could see, we have,
okay,
again,
it's order 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 Butterworth, and order 2 and 4 Language-Riley. Okay, let's see what we can do with these filters and with all the modifications that you introduced in the processor in order to have a real lab scenario that we don't know which one needs to be delayed or not. Okay.
Okay, this is the MM4. Now I'm gonna change to see the MM10.
Okay, let me draw the rectangular area where we need to do this. Okay, can you shift the labels of the phase? Okay, that is exactly the point. And can you draw, Oscar, the arrows in order that in the explanation people can understand better? You can draw your line. That is the angle of one band, and this is the angle of the other band. So we can see that they are apart, but it's more tilt in the low frequencies. So what we need to do is to delay the mid-high speakers. And from what I see, we need to delay around half of the time period of 100 Hertz. We need to delay around 5 milliseconds. And the consequences of put 5 milliseconds in the top speaker is that the total latency of the system will be 5 milliseconds more. And in this case, I do prefer to not do that. I prefer to only delay the lower portion of frequencies of the MM4. In this case, I want to have more phase delay using an additional high-pass filter in the system. So for doing this, we need to change the position of the 0 degree in order to have the purple one more in the center. Okay, a little bit more, Oscar. A little bit more. Okay, that's the perfect position. Okay, so now if we use arrows, and what I want to do is to move this portion up, up. It's not maintaining many. Okay, so I want to do this. And for doing this, we need to use a high pass filter, but I don't want to affect the frequency range. So in order to not affect the frequency range, I select the lower that I can see is around 100 Hertz. And what I can see also is that the area that we want to change, it's around 180 degrees. That is the distance from one of these horizontal arrows to the next. So this means that what we need is around fourth order change. And because the one that affects more attenuation at the cutoff frequency is Links-Riley, I prefer to use Butterworth. So introduce Butterworth and maintain the live trace, the MM4, and the memory, the subwoofer.
Okay.
Okay, so you will introduce in the MM4 Butterworth fourth order at 100 Hertz. And let's see what happens to the phase, and later we'll see the summation.
Butterworth, what order, sorry?
Fourth. Voila, okay. And yeah, we can see that we are pretty good phase aligned without using electronic delay. We are not increasing the latency in the system, but we are adding phase delay in the lower portion of the MM4 to match in time with the time of the subwoofer. So I guess that in the processor you add time to the MM10 in order to do this example. And let's see the summation. Let me clear my drawings. And
okay, that is too much.
Okay. And in the summation, the area of the rectangle will go up pretty nicely. Okay, so you can see we have very, very good summation without using electronic delays, just using the knowledge of the filters. And Merline, it's time that you check if we have questions and answers.
While I'm monitoring the chat, or the comments, I should say, for any additional questions, I do want to make use of the time to make some closing remarks. And that is, I want to express gratitude to my fellow colleagues at Meyer Sound, Oscar Barrientos, Technical Service Manager, Latin America. Thank you very much, Oscar.
Thank you, Bernard.
As well as Mauricio Magú Ramirez, Senior Technical Seminar Instructor at Meyer Sound. Thank you as well, Magú. Great, I enjoyed it a great deal. And we stayed, we managed to stay in time within reason. So a recording of today's webinar will be available within the foreseeable future. It can be found on our Thinking Sound YouTube channel. And so before we look at any questions, I just want to make sure that I want to thank everybody in the Meyer Sound user community for attending. On behalf of Meyer Sound, thank you for being here. This is gonna be the first of 4 webinars. As soon as we know more, we will post it here in the user community and let you know when that's going to happen. But at least we've come to an end of the official part.
You want to say
everybody? Thanks to everybody. Thanks to Marilyn.
Same thing. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Merline, for helping us with this.
Awesome. Okay, motion to adjourn, and we'll see each other soon during the next webinar.